Without wasting your time, let's move straight to the true story. Today's story comes from the country of Brazil. Louie, Jack, and Reggie were three best friends who lived for adventure. One summer, they decided to visit a quiet beach in Brazil. The place was peaceful, surrounded by green trees and shining blue water. Locals warned them to stay away from the far end of the beach, saying strange things happened there. But the friends didn't listen. They laughed and went exploring, excited to see what they could find. While walking near the forest, Reggie saw a very beautiful flower growing in the sand. It had red petals that glowed softly in the sunlight and gave off a sweet smell. Reggie felt drawn to it. Jack told him, "Don't touch it, man, it looks weird." But Reggie smiled and said, "It's just a flower." The moment he touched it, the flower moved like it was alive. Sharp thorns shot out from its petals and pierced Reggie's fingers. He screamed in pain as blood dropped onto the sand. Louie and Jack quickly ran to help him. They wrapped his hand with a cloth, but the wound didn't stop bleeding. It looked strange, almost like something had bitten him. That night, Reggie couldn't sleep. His hand turned black and cold. He whispered again and again, "The flower is calling me." His friends didn't understand what he meant. Late at night, Jack woke up to a strange sound coming from outside their tent. He saw Reggie standing near the same flower. The plant had grown larger, glowing red in the darkness. When Reggie turned around, his eyes were shining and his fingers were gone, only black roots remained. By morning, Reggie was missing. Louie and Jack searched everywhere but found only red petals on the sand. The cursed flower stood there, taller than before, swaying in the wind, as if it was alive and smiling. Louie and Jack were terrified after Reggie disappeared. The morning sun rose over the beach, but the air felt cold and heavy. They searched the whole area, calling Reggie's name again and again. Only the sound of waves answered them. When they reached the spot where the strange flower had been, it was no longer small. It had grown tall like a bush, with many red glowing petals. Louie noticed something horrifying. Inside one of the petals, there was a faint image of Reggie's face, frozen as if he was screaming. Jack shouted, "We need to get out of here," but Louie wanted to find the truth. He thought maybe Reggie was still alive somewhere. They packed their bags quickly and started walking back through the forest. However, the forest didn't look the same. The trees seemed darker, and the roots under their feet moved slightly, as if the ground was breathing. Louie's skin crawled with fear. As they walked, they found Reggie's watch hanging from a vine. The vine was moving slowly, twisting like a snake. Louie tried to pull it, but when he touched it, the vine tightened around his wrist and burned his skin. He screamed and tore it off. The burn mark looked like a flower pattern. At night, they stayed inside an old wooden hut near the beach. Jack couldn't sleep. He heard whispers coming from the window, soft, familiar whispers calling his name. When he looked outside, he saw Reggie standing near the glowing red flower. His body was covered in black vines, and his eyes were red. Reggie slowly raised his hand and pointed toward Jack, whispering, "Come back to the flower." Jack froze in terror as the vines began crawling toward the hut, breaking through the wooden walls. Louie grabbed his arm and screamed, "Run!" The nightmare had only just begun. Louie and Jack ran as fast as they could through the dark forest. The red glow behind them grew stronger with every step. They could hear the sound of vines moving, sliding across the sand and trees like snakes. Jack shouted, "It's coming after us." Louie looked back and saw the red flower glowing in the distance, its petals opening wide, releasing black smoke into the air. The whole beach was turning red. They didn't stop running until they reached a small broken bridge deep inside the forest. Both of them were tired and scared. Louie's wrist was burning again where the vine had touched him. When he pulled his sleeve up, he saw that the burn mark was spreading slowly up his arm like black veins. Jack looked at it and said, "Louie, we need to go to the village." "You're not okay." But Louie shook his head. "We can't go back that way. The forest has changed." Suddenly, they heard soft whispering voices coming from the trees. The whispers sounded like Reggie. "Don't run, come back, stay with me." The voices were coming from all directions. The wind carried the smell of that same sweet flower. Jack covered his nose, but Louie looked confused, his eyes half closed as if something was pulling him. Jack grabbed him and shouted, "Don't listen. It's not real." But Louie's body started shaking. He said in a weak voice, "Reggie's alive. He needs help." Jack looked into Louie's eyes and saw that they were turning red. The ground under them began to move. Black vines came out of the soil, wrapping around Louie's legs. Jack tried to pull him free, but the vines were too strong. Louie screamed as the vines dragged him down into the dark soil. Jack fell to his knees, shouting his friend's name, but only the forest answered with soft, evil laughter. Jack sat on the cold ground, breathing hard. The forest was silent again, but the smell of the flowers still filled the air. Louie was gone. The soil where the vines had pulled him under was moving slowly, as if something was still alive beneath it. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know what to do. Every direction looked the same, dark trees and red mist glowing between them. He decided to move toward the beach. Maybe he could find help or signal someone. But as he walked, he felt that the forest was watching him. He heard small cracking sounds from behind. When he turned, he saw two glowing red eyes staring from the shadows. He froze. The eyes came closer and a figure stepped out. It was Louie. But Louie didn't look human anymore. His skin was pale and dry, his arms covered with black roots. His voice was soft but cold. "Jack, why did you run?" Jack stepped back, shaking his head. "You're not Louie. What happened to you?" Louie smiled strangely. "The flower showed me everything. It's not evil, it just wants us to join it." Jack turned and ran. Louie screamed behind him, and suddenly vines shot out from the ground, trying to grab his legs. Jack stumbled, falling near a tree. He picked up a sharp branch and started cutting the vines, his hands bleeding. He managed to break free and ran until he reached the edge of the beach again. The once beautiful beach now looked like a red field of flowers. The plants were everywhere, growing from the sand, from rocks, and even from old trees. In the middle of them stood Reggie and Louie, both covered in vines, smiling with red glowing eyes. Jack felt weak as he realized he was surrounded. The flowers began to open, releasing black smoke and soft whispers calling his name. Jack stood frozen as the red flowers surrounded him. The soft whispers grew louder, calling his name again and again. The beach that once looked calm and beautiful was now a nightmare. Every wave that touched the sand carried pieces of black vines. The air smelled like blood and smoke. Reggie and Louie stood in front of him, their bodies almost fully covered in vines. Their eyes glowed bright red, and their voices sounded hollow. "Join us, Jack," they said together. "The flower gives life. Don't fight it." Jack shook his head in fear. "You're not my friends anymore," he screamed and ran toward the water, thinking he could escape by swimming away. But as soon as he stepped into the sea, the waves turned dark. The water around him started bubbling. Black vines rose from under the water, wrapping around his legs and pulling him down. He struggled and screamed, trying to break free. He grabbed a sharp shell and cut the vines, managing to crawl back to the sand. His leg was bleeding badly, but he didn't stop. He looked around and saw a small wooden boat tied near the rocks. Gathering all his strength, he limped toward it. Before he could reach it, he heard Louie's voice behind him, closer this time. "You can't leave, Jack. The flower grows everywhere." Jack turned and saw that vines were spreading fast, crawling across the sand like living snakes. They reached the boat first and broke it apart in seconds. Jack fell to his knees, tears in his eyes. He whispered, "Please, someone help me." But only the wind answered. Then, suddenly, a bright flash of lightning struck near the forest. For a second, Jack saw something huge moving behind the trees, a massive red flower taller than a house, breathing slowly like a living creature. Jack realized the horrible truth. The entire island was alive. Jack's heart raced as thunder rolled across the sky. Rain began to pour heavily, but it didn't wash away the red glow spreading across the island. Everywhere he looked, the sand was covered with small red flowers. They were growing fast, opening and closing like mouths. Each one whispered softly, "Stay with us, Jack." Jack stumbled back, holding his injured leg. He tried to think. The only thing he could see nearby was an old lighthouse on a hill at the edge of the beach. Maybe he could hide there until morning. Gathering his courage, he started running toward it. The vines followed him, crawling across the wet ground like black snakes. When he finally reached the lighthouse, he pushed open the rusty door and ran inside. It was dark and smelled of dust and sea salt. He shut the door quickly and leaned against it, breathing hard. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then he heard something dripping from above. He looked up and froze. The ceiling was covered in red flowers, growing through cracks in the walls. Their petals were moving slowly, like they were breathing. Jack climbed the stairs carefully, trying to reach the top. Each step creaked under his weight. The higher he went, the louder the whispers became. He covered his ears, but the voices were inside his head now. Reggie's voice, Louie's voice, calling him by name. When he reached the top, lightning flashed again, and through the window he saw the entire island glowing red. The trees were gone, replaced by a massive network of vines. The giant flower in the center was moving, pulsing like a heart. Suddenly, the lighthouse started shaking. The vines had reached the base and were climbing up fast. Jack screamed and tried to light the old signal fire, hoping someone at sea might see him. But before he could finish, a vine smashed through the window and wrapped around his arm. The island wasn't just alive, it was hungry. The storm raged outside as the lighthouse shook violently. Jack struggled to free himself from the vine that had wrapped around his arm. The thorny roots dug into his skin, pulling him closer to the window. He grabbed a broken piece of glass from the floor and slashed at the vine until it let go. His arm was bleeding badly, but he didn't stop. He stumbled toward the old fire lamp at the top of the lighthouse. The whispers in his head grew louder. "Stop fighting, Jack. Come back to us," said Louie's voice. "It doesn't hurt once you become part of it," whispered Reggie. Jack shouted, "You're not real," but deep down, a part of him was starting to doubt. The flower's red light outside pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. With trembling hands, Jack poured oil into the old lantern and struck a match. The flame flickered weakly at first, then grew brighter. The light spread across the dark room, and for the first time, the vines around him stopped moving. Jack quickly aimed the lantern toward the giant flower outside the window. The bright firelight hit the flower, and it screamed an inhuman, terrible sound. The vines around the lighthouse began burning, releasing black smoke. Jack kept the flame steady, even as heat and smoke filled the room. "Burn," he shouted, his eyes full of tears. The ground shook as the fire spread across the island. The flowers turned black one by one, shriveling in pain. The giant flower cracked open, and from inside it, Jack saw the faces of Louie and Reggie fading away like ashes in the wind. The lighthouse began to collapse, but Jack didn't stop. He held the lantern high until the very last second. Then everything went white. When morning came, rescue boats arrived near the island. They found the beach empty, no people, no vines, only ashes and one standing object, the lighthouse, still glowing faintly red inside. And from deep within, a whisper echoed. "Thank you for freeing us, Jack." Sometimes, beauty hides danger. What looks peaceful can be deadly inside. Reggie touched the flower out of curiosity and lost everything. This story reminds us that not all beautiful things are meant to be touched. Some secrets of nature should stay untouched forever. If you liked this horror story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more spine-chilling stories like this one. Comment below, what would you have done if you found that red glowing flower? Learn English through stories and enjoy thrilling storytelling every week. Turn on the bell icon so you never miss a new horror tale.